Hi readers, it's Lori. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. Today, I'm going to talk about the books that I read in the month of September 2023. Okay, Series September, which is put on by Krista at Books and Jams and Sarah at Sarah's Nightstand each year. I participated in this pretty, I would say, wholeheartedly. This wasn't all of the books that I read in the month of September, but a great number of them were read because they were a series. So let's talk about how that went. So the first one I read is The Sentence is Death by Anthony Horowitz. This is book 2 in the Hawthorne and Horowitz series. There are 5 altogether, but the 5th one will be coming out in 2024. So the first one is The Word is Murder. The second one is The Sentence is Death. The third is A Line to Kill, which I do own. And that one came out about a year or so after this one, maybe 2 years. The Twist of the Knife is also out. I don't own that one. And then the last one, it is called Close to Death. So far 5 in this series. I've got a ways to go, but I really enjoyed this one. This is a solid series for me. So they're standalone, these, I would say, except that it's good to have the history with Hawthorne and Horowitz, because essentially in book 1, Anthony Horowitz is hired by Detective Hawthorne to follow him and write a book about him and about what a great detective he is. He's a bit of a narcissist for sure. And Horowitz isn't sure he really likes him, but he's also somewhat fascinated by him. And so together they kind of stumble upon these different cases that they can sort of both investigate or both give their opinion around. They're not always mutually agreeable, but it's a great series. So this one follows Richard, who is a lawyer and he's a divorce attorney. He's actually in the middle of a pretty high-end divorce case, and he's found bludgeoned to death in his apartment with a very, very expensive bottle of wine nearby. There are several suspects in this murder, one of which, two of which, I guess, are the people who are getting the divorce, but one in particular that he is sort of fighting against. Then his partner is off somewhere else when this happens, and he's kind of doing some things he probably shouldn't be doing with someone he shouldn't be doing them with. And then there are some other kind of people that come along the way. I love the sort of the unique proclivities of some of the characters in this one. I really loved the sort of the why this is called The Sentence is Death. That part was really, I really enjoyed that a lot. And just generally, it's well paced, it's easy to read, it's funny, it's, not predictable necessarily. And Anthony Horowitz is a master of crime writing. I really enjoyed this. So book 2 of that series, not quite finished for sure. Okay, the second one I picked up is Dark Corners by Megan Golden. This is the second in the Rachel Crawl series, the first one being The Night Swim. Rachel Crawl is a podcaster / investigator in this series. And this one was just okay for me. Rachel is called by the FBI to come to Florida to be interviewed about a missing person case there in Florida. It is not someone she knows, but it is a person who went to visit someone in prison named Terrence Bailey, and they want to understand after that visit what happened to her and if Rachel can lend any information to their case. She then decides while she's in Florida to stay there because there's a social media influencer conference, and this missing person whose name was Madison, I was going to say it started with an M. Madison was a social media influencer, and so she wants to just kind of get a feel for that and see if there's anything she can find out, because she does, kind of investigate as a part of this podcast that she, continues to produce. And so she goes to this social media conference and meets a bunch of other influencers, and also stays in touch with this FBI detective as they are working this case and trying to see if they can discover where Madison is located. I think what was challenging for me is I didn't find that premise of the FBI asking her to come to Florida to be interviewed about the disappearance of someone she didn't know. I didn't find that to be very logical. I just think the FBI, first of all, they have people in every state. Second of all, why would they call her down to the scene of no crime, essentially, yet just this missing person? The second part I had trouble with was I didn't really like any of the social media influencers. They were just, they were just artificial and just, I don't know, the whole thing just didn't quite land with me. And then there were some choices that she made and the detective made later that I thought were sort of far-fetched as well. So I think she meant well. I think it wasn't very scary, really, and just generally kind of flopped for me. But that doesn't mean that other people don't and won't love it, because we're all of our tastes are different. So there's nothing wrong with that. I tried to read Nora Roberts' Shadow Spell, book 2 of this series. I just could not finish it. I don't know if it's because I wasn't able to really track with the audio book or what. I maybe will give this another shot in the near future so that I could say I finished this series and probably read it physically, because I read the first one physically. I remember literally where I was when I read it. I just couldn't get into it. But this is the second in this trilogy of the Cousins O'Dwyer, and it's witches and, like witches from the past and witches from the present. And it should work for me, but it just didn't quite then. I am finding that I'm having a little more trouble with audio lately than usual. So that could be it. It could just be about me. Then to complete series September reading, I read book 2 and book 3 of the Hidden Iceland series by Ragnar Jonasson. I had read The Darkness, which is book 1, a year or so ago, and I had really always wanted to read books 2 and 3. This is going to be tricky for me to describe this to you because it doesn't really make sense, and I don't want to give away a whole lot because the way he crafted this is brilliant. I think it's brilliant. Book 1, The Darkness, and book 3, The Mist, were my favorites. Book 2, which was The Island in the middle, obviously, was still good, but book 1 and book 3 were definitely my favorites. This series follows a detective named Hulda Hermansdotter, and it is a connective tissue to it that is delivered in a way that is incredible. So it starts at the end and ends with the beginning, so to speak. I don't want to say anything else about that except to say, wow, that was an incredible ride. And my first reads by Ragnar Jonasson, this series, it will not be my last. I really picked this up initially because I was really curious about Nordic noir crime fiction, and I had some friends who were reading it. I think my cousins have read this, maybe not this series, but some books by this guy. I have a Scandinavian side of my family, so I thought, why not? Let's just see what it's like. The way that Ragnar describes the atmosphere of these books is incredible. He does develop the characters over time that are similar in all 3 books very well. He takes a great deal of time to sort of unfold some of these things, which I appreciate. So you really feel like you're alongside Hulda, trying to, get to the bottom of these things, interview these people. It was quite enjoyable, and I highly recommend it. But you have to read it in the order in which it was published. So book 1, 2, and 3. Otherwise, you won't have the same experience. Okay, outside of the series, September reading, I tried to read Broken Horses by Brandi Carlile, who's a favorite of mine. She's a singer-songwriter. You may have heard of her. I love her music. I listen to it all the time, and she just really inspires me and makes me feel things when she sings, and partners with a lot of other singer-songwriters, and it's really seems to be a very generous person in the world. However, I could not get to this memoir, and so I had renewed it at least once, and I let it go back to the library. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to put a pin in that and read it again at some point. While I was away, I read Silence for the Dead by Simone St. James. This was one of the ones that I kind of crept in, and I didn't realize it had ever been published until I saw it one day on some advertisement. I love Simone St. James. This is a creepy, creepy Gothic mystery. It's set in an old Gothic home that is now a sanatorium for people who serve, men who served in World War I, who are considered in need of care, whether that's mental health, whether that's physical care. It's both in some cases. And Kitty Weeks is hired to take care of them as a nurse on one of the shifts there at the sanatorium, which is called Portis House. And it's very remote, and it's very, very creepy. However, this isn't so creepy that it's like you're going to be like not able to sleep at night, at least not for me. I sort of buddy read this with Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library. We both were sort of talking about it in a hall, and she said, this looks like something I need to buddy read with somebody. So I reached out and said, hey, let's buddy read. And by then she was already on chapter 13. So I tried to catch up. She kept reading. I tried to keep reading. We did end up reading simultaneously, but we didn't communicate a whole lot either because I was on my trip and she was, busy doing her life. But it was an enjoyable read. I really, really appreciated the atmospheric nature of this one too. It was great character development for Kitty as well as for some of the other patients and the other nurses. It was a real ride through what soldiers went through during World War I, which is a historical fiction time period that I don't read as much of as I do World War II. So I was grateful for this because I've been wanting to read more books that were set in that time period. My grandfather served in World War I. And just generally, I liked how this unfolded and how it gave you both a story of these folks that wasn't creepy, that was just sort of, their what their lives were like at that time and what happened in these kinds of facilities at that time. And then also just kind of the creep factor to it too. So I really liked it a lot. While I was in DC, I went, as you know, if you saw my haul, I went to Kramer Books with Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand, and I picked up Everyone Here is Lying. And when I finished Silence for the Dead, I picked this up and I started reading it right before I got on the flight, during my layover, during the second flight, and then I was almost done. So the next morning I devoured it to the end. I loved this book. Okay, this may be my favorite Sherry Lapena book that I have read, and I've read all but one of hers. The End of Her is the only one I haven't yet read. I've heard some people didn't like this. I absolutely loved it. Okay, we begin this story with a man named William who is headed out to do something he shouldn't be doing, and something happens to him in that moment that really kind of changes the trajectory of his life in a way he was not expecting. He returns home to be with his child who has a bit of a behavior disorder or some sort of diagnosis. I can't really recall if they actually name it or if they just teeter around it, but she's got some pretty intense behavior. She's very, very angry. She's very difficult to parent, and both he and his wife have had some challenges with her. He comes home to find her alone, and she's 9, so he's a little suspicious about that. And then something occurs between the two of them. Next thing you know, this little girl whose name is Avery, I don't know why I can't remember that because I have a friend whose name is Avery. Avery goes missing, and the entire neighborhood is being sort of, is on the alert about this, obviously, because there's a missing child, but also police are interviewing the neighborhood, trying to find out what happened to Avery. They're interviewing William and his wife and their child. And again, Sherry Lapena does neighborhood suspense thrillers so well. I think I enjoy them all the time. This kind of almost closed circle, although of course they can come and go, but very close, isolated group of people. What happened? What do they know? What do they not know? And in this case, the title tells it all. Everyone here is lying. And when you go in knowing that, it's quite fun to play with and think through while you're reading it. What I love the most about this book, and I was still at around 4 stars or so, 4.5 stars, I don't know, something toward the end as I was reading it. The way she ends this, oh my gosh, I was like, what in the world happened? And then I thought, what in the world? How did she think to do that? That was just so clever. I really, really think that this one and the ending line of another book that I read earlier this year, those endings will stick with me for at least this entire year, but probably beyond. I would read it again right away if I wasn't trying to read some other books. I really need to share it with some other people in my family because I think they'll really, really enjoy it. And I love this beautiful, beautiful cover. What happened to Avery? What did William do? Some other things that other people in the neighborhood have done or maybe not done. And perfect. So that's it. That's my reading wrap up for September. I almost finished another one, but I didn't quite make it. And I don't like to fudge. So that one will go on my October wrap up, but I really almost read 7. It was so close. It was just so close. So let me know if you've read any of these, if you like these authors, if any of these intrigue you and you plan to read them, which ones would they be? You know, I always love if you share some of your thoughts, feelings, and perspectives on these books or these authors. You know, you get a lot of buzz from people. And again, I just want you to know that my buzz and my feelings about certain books may not be the same as you. So do go in and kind of research them and, you know, see if you think that those will be fantastic. But I really enjoyed my reading month. I love it when I can read a book from start to finish in less than a day and half a day. I think it ended up it was just so much fun. It was great to keep me on that flight and just not sleeping and worrying about anything except for what I was reading. And in that moment, I was in a closed space. It was great fun. So thanks again. I appreciate you. Thank you for subscribing, liking, sharing with others if you have. And as always, happy reading. Bye.